running a minute behind schedule. I've now joined by three more brilliant guests. I'm not seeing Maura's having some connection. I know that Maura is currently at a UK Dementia Research Institute event for early career researchers, I think maybe in London, so which could be causing a few connectivity issues. But thank you so much for joining us, Maura, and remembered your badge. Well done. So coming up over the next half an hour, let me go to my captions. There we go. We have smart brain imaging to understand disease, and I'm joined by Zeynep Şahin, Dr. Maura Malpetti, and Scott Mitchell. Hello, Scott. Thank you so much for finding time to join us.
Hi, good morning, Adam. Good to see you. You well?
I am. We're an hour in, and the hour's flown by, and we didn't run out of things to say, so that's always a good sign. Why don't we start with some introductions? I tell you what, I'm going to go to you first, Scott. Although I think you perhaps need no introduction to some of our watchers.
Oh, I don't know. I think, you know, the easiest way to explain me and my involvement here is I was married to the late Dame Barbara Windsor. I was with Barbara for 27 years, and as well documented, Barbara was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2014. So I went through that journey with her till unfortunately we lost her in 2020. So what I do is now I campaign I'm an ambassador for Alzheimer's Research UK. I do as much campaigning as I can to raise awareness, to fundraise, you know, and just to keep this subject out there and keep talking about it. I'm very passionate about it. I mean, to me, it's now part of Barbara's legacy. You know, it's become more than her being remembered for her bikini top flying off in Carry On Camping, or, you know, telling
still
people.
One of my favorite films. Honestly, I was so excited because I was born in 1974. I give away my age, and I was kind of brought up on Carry On films and things like that. I'm so excited to. I'm only sorry I never got a chance to meet, you know, while you were still here. But you've done so much work since. I mean, throughout, obviously, while Dame Barbara was with us, and since as well.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Barbara was very courageous, you know, when she agreed that we'd go public with this. And that wasn't for 4 years into diagnosis, because, you know, like a lot of people who get the diagnosis, Barbara didn't want to talk about it. She wanted to just get on with her life, as if to say, no, this is not happening to me. And that's what we had to do until, of course, we got to the stage where, unfortunately, the symptoms were impossible to hide anymore. And her neurologist, Dr. Angus Kennedy, and I spoke to Barbara at great length over and over again to say, you know, we need to do this now. And also you'll be helping so many different people by going public. So it took a lot of courage. You know, I'm always very proud of Barbara, the fact that she took part in this initial campaigning. She did videos. You know, we visited Downing Street to you know, urge the Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister then, Boris Johnson, to look at dementia research, to look at social care funding, all of these things. And I've continued that because, you know, her effect, which they called in the dementia world the Barbara Windsor effect, really did have a big imprint. And if I can continue to do that for her, for all the future generations, then as long as it makes a difference, I'm very passionate about doing that.
I think it's amazing when people that have that reach use that kind of power, if you like, that they have in this way. I mean, I'm a big fan of Terry Pratchett books as well, and I was kind of love that, you know, people like Sir Terry Pratchett and Dame Barbara that did this, because they're people that have got that platform to be able to raise it. But even then, people like Chris, who would, I don't know, you won't have had a chance necessarily to join us, Chris Roberts, who joined at the start of the day. You don't have to be a celebrity to kind of pick up that flag or that banner and wave it, that ordinary people can also raise awareness, both in their communities or through their daily, you know, through they do in their life, whether that's through becoming dementia friends or joining community groups and things like that. But thank you very much, Scott, for that great introduction. I'm going to go to Maura next to introduce yourself, Maura.
Hi, Adam. It's super nice to see you. Also, Zeynep, it's super nice to see you after a few years. And Scott, is super nice to meet you because you are superhero fundraising and raising awareness about dementia. So you're doing an amazing job, really. So yeah, like just to introduce briefly myself, I'm Maura Malpetti and I'm a Race Against Dementia and Alzheimer Research UK Fellow, and I'm working at the University of Cambridge. Today I'm tuning in from Manchester because I'm here for a conference, so I hope that it will not be loud during the break. So yeah, I'm super happy to be here, and I'm here to also raise a bit of awareness about the tools that we use to study dementia. And in particular, in Cambridge, we are looking at inflammation in dementia, and that is a very common and present features across different types of dementia. So it could be a good target to try to find a cure for different types of dementia. And in Cambridge, we are looking at that with these special scans that are called positron emission tomography, and they are particular because we inject dyes in the volunteers, and these go to the brain, and then they bind the specific proteins, and because of that we can see where the inflammation is in the brain. And we are trying also to develop some more feasible and easy test with blood to look at inflammation with a simple blood test rather than asking people with dementia coming every time for these very sophisticated scans. So yeah, there is a lot of things that we can do, and this is just one of the things that we focus in Cambridge that I'm focusing for my fellowship. Yeah, it's just to give you a bit of flavor.
Well, I'm going to come back to you to ask you more questions. And in the meantime, I'm going to go to, I should add that I didn't give you the introduction, that this session is called Smart Brain Imaging to Understand Disease. Zeynep, why don't I come to you next? Why don't you just introduce yourself?
Hello, hi. So my name is Zeynep Şahin and I'm a PhD student at King's College London. And honestly, it's a pleasure to be with you three here today. It's like a big hug. So currently at King's College London, I use retinal imaging, so not brain imaging, but retinal imaging and machine learning in the hopes of detecting and subtyping dementia. So that's my big 4-year target. So currently I'm supervised by Professor Dominic Fitch, Professor of Old Age Psychiatry, and Professor Tim Jackson, who's a consultant ophthalmologist at King's College Hospitals. So
people wouldn't think of the eye, would they, when they think of dementia? They don't think about eyesight necessarily, or what you can learn from an eye. Sorry, I interrupted you. I thought you finished.
No, sorry, I'm like droning on.
Well, I'm gonna come to you first, then. Why don't you tell us more fully about your work?
Okay, sure. So I'm currently working in the intersection of psychiatry, neurology and ophthalmology, well, retinal imaging. And it's actually quite exciting because retinal imaging, the area of it, it's something that's becoming vastly popular right now. I mean, I'm currently in the process of writing a paper, and since 2012, there's just been less than 600 papers published looking at retinal imaging and dementia. For my PhD, I'm going to be attaching this onto the already ongoing Enlist UK study, which my colleague Olga had fantastically spoken about. Yes. So my study is going to be like an extension of Enlist. So in the hopes of using eye scans as a potential new biomarker to detect and subtype dementia. And hopefully I'll be looking to recruit participants in the new year. So hopefully it all will go well.
So you've just had the lovely experience that is going through ethics, I imagine.
Well, we're in the process of actually preparing the paperwork. Olga is so brilliant in helping me out.
We should say, I mean, for anybody if anybody's thinking about participating in research or going and signing up to join dementia research, is every study that's in there, and every research study across the UK will have had this ethical approval. And I'm just going to ask you to tell me what you think about the ethics process in a facial expression. Just if anybody's worried that that's not necessarily like a rigorous process to make sure, to show me your faces that tell me what that's like. Go on, do it.
I mean, I think it's, yeah, rigorous is a good word.
If you go to Twitter and hashtag, look, we've had one of our people on, Robin Dowland, who isn't joining us this year, but I think did last year, is talking about they're doing ethics amendments now. Ethics amendments, ethics panels are notoriously rigorous. They will very much make sure that the research is useful and valuable, and the information you'll get with it. So,
and I think it's very important also for safety reasons, right? You want to really be sure that people sign up for things that are safe and well done. So, like, I mean, they are rigorous and sometimes long, but I think it's very important.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would question the overall value of adding those ethics reviews to it. Zeynep, can you tell me, so looking at the eye, I was at a conference the other week where they were looking at how they can actually measure amyloid in the eye. Is that something you're doing at King's?
Actually, I mean, hopefully, if we can detect amyloid using sophisticated retinal imaging, I think that would be fantastic, because it would mean that we can potentially use eyes as eye imaging as a biomarker. But I've also read some papers actually from our colleagues, especially in Italy, who have detected amyloids in the eye, in the retina, but this was done on post-mortem
I see.
individuals rather than alive participants.
We have a podcast coming in, which we're recording in the new year, looking at this. There's researchers in Canada looking at it. And the idea is that you could then potentially use equipment that's already in places like opticians to take that picture. They apply artificial intelligence to it, which I think I've got a question about AI in my list here, to predict that, so that you could start to measure that over time from people who aren't necessarily worried about dementia or going to a specific clinic for this. They're just part of their routine eye test is to start to look for that, which would be a great way, because I'm sure we come up with this. One of the problems that we face right now is some of the drug trials, like the one we've heard about this week, some of the real problems is finding people to participate in those when they're looking for very specific people who aren't necessarily going to the doctors or coming forward because they haven't got a memory problem. But if you can start to look at the presence of these things in advance, you can find people before symptoms go and recruit them into trials, and then that helps. I'm going to shut up now. Maura, tell us more about your work.
No, you should never shut up. I think it's very interesting tool. Also, like, it's very interesting, Zeynep, just to follow up, like, potentially, as Adam said, we could use that as a screening tool, right, in the broader population. So I will look forward to your PhD results. So yeah, like for my research, what do you want to know a bit more in particular?
I don't know. Well, Scott's with us. Scott's, I did put on the question, Scott, ask researcher questions. So, well, I've got my maker with Scott. Did you think of anything?
Yeah, hi, Zeynep. I'd like to know, obviously you're doing all this incredible work around the eyes, etc. Now, I understand that it's the imaging and the scans and things like that where you really pick up on these things. Are there any times when we ourselves would notice any kind of symptoms that you think would be related to dementia through the eyes, like, you know, any blurring or distortion or anything like that?
That's actually such a good question, and thank you so much for asking it. Right now, I mean, the way that for my PhD anyway. So another things that I'm trying to differentiate using machine learning is to see whether, for instance, Alzheimer's disease causes bad eyesight, or whether bad eyesight causes Alzheimer's disease. So it's a bit of a, like, you know, a chicken and an egg situation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to answer your question, I mean, you can definitely get poor eyesight if you do have dementia, But what I am actually looking at using imaging such as optical coherence tomography is actually some of the cells that are actually at the back of the eye and how they influence vascular changes. But of course, when these cells change, of course, you would also have blurriness, for instance, or you might see a double. So it would definitely affect physically the way that you see as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's the tricky thing. So you both think, are you both using artificial intelligence or machine learning as well? Maura looks like she'd like to. Or you're planning to? Is that you are, but you just don't like to answer questions about it because it's a bit hard. Because so for those who are watching who don't really know much about technology, could you maybe tell us what the difference between machine learning and artificial intelligence is? And then how any examples of how this might have already been used in day-to-day ways that people would have experienced. Zeynep,
shall I go? Okay.
Yeah, go on.
So machine learning is actually comes under the umbrella term of artificial intelligence. And we use machine learning in order to start building patterns and to see whether the patterns that we build, we will be able to apply to for instance, clinically, so like in scans. So if we do have scans of eye imaging, for instance, I mean, our eyes can only spot like certain changes, but by using machine learning, we would be able to actually potentially see changes that the human eye might not be able to detect. And this is exactly what machine learning is. So we're going to be using this algorithm and apply this algorithm to tens of thousands of images to see even the minor changes that occur in retinal imaging or brain imaging and so on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like an example, for example, like you asked for an example, and I think race against dementia is quite a unique place in this machine learning world, because we are collaborating with McLaren and Red Bull, and we are trying to apply their machine learning approach into our data. So I think it is so powerful having this collaboration between engineers, clinicians, computer scientists that can really bring to methods in the clinical research. So yeah, that's just one of the examples of how we are trying to apply that.
And I mean, the example I use, only because I know about this, is at Moorfields Eye Hospital, isn't it? So I don't know if you all remember, when we all went to the opticians a few years ago, they started saying, oh, would you like to pay extra for that picture at the back of your eye to see if it's getting worse? And then because the opticians, as I understand the stories, the opticians couldn't necessarily then know what to do with the pictures that came back. And if any slight issue that was raised, what it prompted them was to refer them to the eye hospital. And of course, as a result, the eye hospital started getting tons of referrals for people that they couldn't necessarily cope with. And so what they did was they fed a clever computer from a big search engine company, I think, lots and lots of pictures, and said, right, this is one that has the issue, this is the one that hasn't, and trained this computer by getting it to look at some, and when it already saying, here's a picture and this is what it tells us. And if you give a computer enough of those and then give it one without telling it what it can tell us, it can say, oh, I think based on all the information you can before, it's like this one. And so what they could do then was teach a computer to spot what otherwise an ophthalmologist would look for, and they could then do it actually more accurately. And to start with, they still get doctors to look at them and go, yes, I agree with the computer. But then over time, trust builds up and you can start to use a computer. And I guess that could be where it goes with Alzheimer's, with eye tests, as such exciting potential.
Definitely. And that machine is actually called OCT, so optical coherence tomography, the one that you've mentioned. And there are other eye imaging techniques available as well, other than OCT.
And Maura, PET scans are quite routinely used in dementia. Can you tell us, so for anybody who's watching who might want to participate in a study who's being told, oh, you're going to have a PET scan, what does that actually involve? What's that like? Is that quite invasive? Does it hurt? Is it scary? What's it like to get a PET scan?
So there are pros and cons in comparison to other brain imaging techniques, like for example, structure MRI. So the difference is that we inject this radioactive dye in the blood. So of course we need to be, there are a lot of safety measures to do this and the calibration of the radioactivity, because these are very powerful tools because goes and binds proteins in the brain. But like, it's not dangerous at all. There is like always a consultation for how much radioactivity a person can get through the PET scan. But if we think about PET scan, is basically the same amount of radioactivity that we observe in our body just living in a place for a few years, or getting on a plane and going to San Francisco from the UK. So it's not dangerous in that way. Is less noisy than such MRI, and basically when you lie down, you basically can just fall asleep in the scan, which is good. Sometimes it's nicer being a bit isolated from the world and just fall asleep. So yeah, I think there are pros and cons, but it is such a powerful tool because it's the only way to measure the pathology in the brain in living people with dementia, rather than back then when we didn't have PET, we just had the post-mortem validation of what happened in the brain with brain donations. Well, now we can do that in real life.
Thank you very much. I'm discovering in real time that people are having a problem donating because apparently the donation link has expired. So I'm frantically trying to fix that while this goes on. But while I'm slightly distracted looking at that, Scott, for those who are watching who really don't know, kind of who are thinking about what they could do, what would you hope that people who are watching today will take away, and what's your work all about? What do you want them to do?
I think, well, number one, it's been fascinating to me listening to the talk about the research, because I've joined up myself for the whole plan, and I was matched to various trials that I can take part in, and I've started those over the last few days. The initial ones for me are like cognitive ones that I can do over the computer. But I've also said that I will go forward and do any physical trials that need to be done. And I think, I think that's vitally important that all of us play our part in that. Of course, there's the donation side, which I know you're trying to work out at the moment, which is fantastic.
You just talk amongst yourselves. Well,
when technology works, and it is really so essential, the donation, and also, what can you do to help start those donations? We can all do different things. Not everyone is going to be able to bake cakes and have a coffee morning. Not everyone is going to be able to run a marathon, but I'm sure there's something that we can all do in our own way to help. And if there's nothing that we can do because of time or our own ability, of course, just donating as little or as much as you can help so much in the long run. It's been a wonderful week, hasn't it, in terms of this breakthrough that has happened, and all of this has been after years and years of research and people supporting. I very foolishly said I'm going to run my third London marathon in 2023. I said never again after the first one and the second one, but this will be the final one. And I'm going to run with a team called Babs Army for Alzheimer's Research UK. So there's all things like that you can do. And before anyone says, yes, Scott, but you're young and fit, no, it's going to be 5 days before my 60th birthday. I'd never run before I was 55. It's amazing what you can do. And I cannot tell you the health benefits that go with that. And especially I'd say the mental health side of it. So they're the things you can do. You can join the Dementia Research Service. You can donate, you can become a dementia friend, you can learn more about it. And I think that's something we all need to do as well, is to be more aware, because there are so many people that this affects now. And silly things like, have we ever thought about when we're in a supermarket and there may be someone, an older person maybe, who seems very vague or has just stood still in the middle of the aisle and seems to just be staring or in your way, and your initial thing would be to get impatient. That could be dementia. That that could be a sign of dementia. There's so many different things that we need to be aware of, how we can help people and be considerate and compassionate before we get on with that kind of rush of our own lives. And of course, you know, being a carer is another thing. There may be people now who are listening to this who are carers themselves. And that is an incredibly difficult situation to be in and cope with, because the majority of us are not qualified to be carers. What we do is we learn as we go along. And it's a very frightening process, not only for the person who has had the diagnosis, but also for the loved ones and for the families, because it will change your life as well from the day of diagnosis. And all I can say, you know, in my own experience, and I am no expert, are the things that I learned. And that is that I had to learn day by day as I went along for the changes that would occur within Barbara. You won't always get it right, and you have to forgive yourself because you're human. And you know, you can be guilty of getting a bit irritable sometimes when someone's asked you the same question 15 times and you think that you've just finished that question for the 15th time, and they look at you as if it's the first time they've said this and ask the same question again. You may take a deep sigh, you may show it through your eyes, but you must forgive yourself. You're human, you will do the best you can. And the only other thing I can say is, when Barbara was in her moments of what I'd say being lost, being frightened, confused, extreme confusion, I would just try and talk to her very gently. I'd just try and hold her hand. I'd talk to her, I'd say her name, I'd say my name, I'd remind her of our relationship, which at times she had forgotten. You know, that's the other thing no one can ever prepare you for, is when someone that you know so intimately and have been with for so many years looks at you and honestly says, how do I know you? Who are you? Nothing can prepare you for that, but these are the realities. These are why we are desperate to find these breakthroughs, and this is why the work that all of you do, you know, that as I say, it's my privilege to share this platform with you today because of the work that you do. Yes, I can make a noise. I have Barbara's fame to use for that, and thank God everyone is. I just think of myself as a minute part, a minute little cog in this incredible machine, with you guys being the main function of it, who really can make the difference.
No, thank you, Scott. I think you're right. And I mean, so many people will be going back and visiting their loved ones over Christmas and their family and things. If you spot anything, if you're uncertain, it's so important to just, I know everybody's been a bit afraid to bother the NHS right now and go see their doctors, but it's incredibly important that there are, despite what you might think, there are things you can do, and going and getting that diagnosis, going to the memory clinic and getting those checks give you some information. And there are lifestyle changes you can make if you have vascular dementia. There are things that can do, and until you get that diagnosis, you can't get that intervention. That's the support that is there, and the potential to participate in some amazing clinical trials and other research through joindementiaresearch.nihr.ac.uk. Thank you very much, Scott Mitchell, Maura Malpetti, and Zeynep. I'm going to pronounce your name right this time because I wrote it down. Zeynep Şahin. Thank you so much, everybody. The three of you.
Thanks so much, Adam.
Joining
Really.
us. For anybody who's watching, who's having problems donating, it's because I've obviously made a mistake and given the expiry date as the date the event takes place. However, we have a backup donation page, and I've just very quickly emailed my very super responsive web person who's going to change that to our backup web donation page. So in a moment, you'll be able to go to chatathon.uk/donate, and it'll take you to a new donation page where you can still donate. Or in the meantime, if you're watching on YouTube or Twitch or on Facebook, there's a link in the chat box there. Thank you very much, Scott, Zeynep, and Maura. And we're going to come to our next guests now. But before we do that, I'm going to play a short film because I need to top up my water and stop panicking slightly as we lost the donation page and lost the stream in that session. So that was a good one. We'll be back shortly. And Scott, are you sticking around? Have you got to go now?
Unfortunately, I
You're
do
gonna go.
have to go, but I cannot tell you thank you for having me on. It's been a privilege to take part.
That's all right. Super. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, with players like David Beckham, you do feel there are certain moments of destiny. Yes!
Football should be unforgettable. Unforgettable goals. Unforgettable saves. Unforgettable moments. Unfortunately, some people will forget. Fans like Steve and Sheila and Tommy. But with a better understanding of dementia, we can help all those living with it. Alzheimer's Society and the FA supporting fans and players affected by dementia.